Question 1. Hiring and recruitment laws. Pre-employment testing and background checks in an environment where different components must interact. A large financial firm is expanding its workforce and implementing a new hiring process that includes pre-employment background checks and cognitive ability tests. However, a group of applicants claims that these hiring assessments disproportionately disqualify candidates from certain racial and groups. Given the legal framework of employment law, what is the most legally compliant approach the company should take? A. Continue using the tests without modification since the company has the right to set hiring standards. B. Eliminate all pre-employment tests to avoid any potential claims of discrimination. C. Conduct a validation study to ensure that the tests are job-related and consistent with business necessity. D. Modify the tests to ensure equal representation across all demographic groups, regardless of qualifications. Answer. C. Conduct a validation study to ensure that the tests are job-related and consistent with business necessity. Explanation. Under Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, pre-employment tests and background checks must be job-related and consistent with business necessity to avoid disparate impact discrimination. A validation study is required under the Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures (UGESP). Determine whether the tests fairly measure skills relevant to the job. Option is incorrect because ignoring potential disparate impact violates anti-discrimination laws, even if the intent is neutral. Option B is incorrect because background checks and cognitive tests can be legally used if properly validated. Option D is incorrect because modifying tests solely to ensure equal demographic outcomes may violate merit-based hiring principles under the Civil Rights Act and EOC guidelines. Relevant laws and guidelines. Title IX of the Civil Rights Act 1964 prohibits employment discrimination. Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures (UGESP) requires validation of hiring tests. Griggs v. Duke Powell, 1971, established the concept of disparate impact discrimination. Question 2. Wage and hour laws. Overtime regulations and exemptions during a critical transition period where existing processes are being revised. A technology company is reclassifying employees under the Fair Labor Standards Act (FLSA) to determine overtime eligibility. A group of employees challenges their classification, arguing that they should receive overtime pay, which factor is the most important in determining whether an employee is exempt from overtime on FLSA. Whether the employee's salary is above $100,000 per year. B. The employee's job title and whether they hold managerial position. C. Whether the employee's primary duties meet the criteria for an exempt category such as executive, administrative, or professional roles. D. Whether the employer explicitly states in the employment contract that the employee is exempt. Answer. C. Whether the employee's primary duties meet the criteria for an exempt category such as executive, administrative, or professional roles. Explanation. The Fair Labor Standards Act (FLSA) establishes overtime exemptions for certain employees based on their primary job duties, salary level, and salary basis. The most critical factor is whether the employee's primary duties fall under an exempt category, executive, administrative, or professional exemptions. Option is incorrect because high salary alone does not automatically make an employee exempt unless they also meet the job duties test. Option B is incorrect because job titles alone are not determinative. An employee must actually perform exempt duties. Option D is incorrect because contract language does not override FLSA requirements. An employee cannot be labeled exempt without meeting legal criteria of relevant laws and guidelines. Fair Labor Standards Act (FLSA) governs overtime pay and exemptions. 29 CFR Part 541 defines the executive, administrative, and professional exemptions. Encino Motor Cars LLC v. Nava, 2018, clarified that FLSA exemptions must be applied according to statutory language. Question 3. Wrongful termination and employee discipline. Constructive discharge and retaliation claims in a situation where formal requirements conflict with practical realities. An employer, a healthcare company, files a complaint with OSHA regarding unsafe working conditions. Shortly afterward, the employee is assigned to an undesirable shift with increased workload and their performance reviews become more critical. The employee eventually claiming that the employer's actions created intolerable conditions. Under employment law, which claim is most relevant to this case? A. The employee has valid claim for constructive discharge as the employer created intolerable working conditions that forced the resignation. B. The employee cannot claim constructive discharge since they voluntarily resign. C. The employer has full discretion over scheduling and performance evaluations, making the claim invalid. D. Since the employee was not fired, no legal claim can be pursued. Answer A. The employee has a valid claim for constructive discharge as the employer created intolerable working conditions that forced the resignation. Explanation: a claim of constructive discharge arises when an employer creates intolerable working conditions that force an employee to resign. In Pennsylvania, State Police v. Suders, 2004, the U.S. Supreme Court held that if an employee is subjected to adverse employment actions that make continued employment unbearable, they may have a legal claim. Additionally, under OSHA's Whistleblower Protections, Section 11C of the Occupational Safety and Health Act, employers cannot retaliate against employees who report workplace safety violations. Retaliation includes adverse job actions like undesirable shift assignments, heavier workloads, or fair performance evaluations. Option B is incorrect because resignation does not eliminate wrongful termination claim if the conditions were intolerable. Option C is incorrect because employer discretion cannot be used as shield for retaliatory conduct. Option D is incorrect because employment law recognizes constructive discharge as form of wrongful termination. Relevant laws and guidelines. Pennsylvania State Police v. Suders, 2004, define constructive discharge in employment law. Occupational Safety and Health Act OSHA Section 11C protects employees from retaliation for reporting safety concerns. Tittle Omen of the Civil Rights Act 1964 also applies if retaliation is based on discrimination complaints. Question 4. In a situation where formal requirements conflict with practical workplace realities, an employer must navigate compliance with employment discrimination laws while ensuring operational efficiency. A national retail company has a dress code that requires all employees to wear a standard uniform, including a hat. An employee who practices a religion that requires them to wear a turban requests an accommodation to wear that instead of the company-provided hat. The employer is concerned that granting this request will open the door to other dress code exceptions, leading to inconsistent enforcement. Under Tittle Omen of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, how should the employer handle this request to ensure compliance with employment discrimination laws while maintaining workplace consistency? A. Deny the request because allowing religious accommodations would lead to inconsistent enforcement of the dress code. B. Grant the request only if the employee can prove that wearing the turban is mandatory in their religious practice. C. Deny the request if the employer can prove that accommodating the religious practice would cause an undue hardship on the business. D. Grant the request because religious accommodations must always be provided regardless. Operational concerns. Answer: C. Deny the request if the employer can prove that accommodating the religious practice would cause an undue hardship on the business. Explanation: under Title Roman of the Civil Rights Act, employers are required to reasonably accommodate employees' sincerely held religious beliefs unless doing so would impose an undue hardship on the business. An undue hardship means significant difficulty or expense beyond minimus cost. The employer cannot deny the request simply because it wants to enforce uniformity. Eliminating option A. The employee does not have to prove that wearing turban is an absolute religious requirement. Eliminating option B. As long as it is sincerely held belief. Employers are not required to grant all religious accommodation requests under any circumstance. Eliminating option D, however, if the employer can demonstrate that allowing religious exemption to the dress code would create an undue hardship, such as safety concerns, substantial costs, or disruption to operations, then the accommodation may be denied, making option C the correct choice. Question 5. During a major transformation where existing methods of performance evaluation are being updated to align with new corporate goals, an employer revises its policies on wage transparency. A state law recently mandated that employers must disclose salary ranges for all job postings. A long-term employee who was hired before this law was passed discovers that new hires with the same job title are receiving significantly salaries than they do. The employee claims this violates the Equal Pay Act (EPA) and demands A salary adjustment. Which of the following best describes the employer's obligations under federal and state wage transparency laws? A. The employer is not required to adjust the employee's salary because the new law applies only to future hires. B. The employer must immediately increase the long-term employee's salary to match that of new hires to comply with pay equity laws. C. The employer must conduct an internal pay equity review and justify any wage differences based on seniority, merit, or other legal factors. D. The employer can maintain different wages for employees with the same title as long as it does not disclose salary discrepancies. Answer. C. The employer must conduct an internal pay equity review and justify any wage differences based on seniority, merit, or other legal factors. Explanation. Under the Equal Pay Act (EPA) and state wage transparency laws, employers must ensure that pay differences are based on legitimate, non-discriminatory factors such as experience, education, merit, or seniority. While new laws may require employers to disclose salary ranges, they do not necessarily mandate retroactive salary increases. Eliminating option B. Employers cannot justify wage disparities solely based on hiring dates, eliminating option A. Additionally, concealing wage discrepancies could violate wage transparency laws, eliminating option D. The correct answer is C, because the employer must analyze the reasons behind the pay difference and ensure they are legally defensible. Question 6. While managing a hybrid approach where timing issues affect work shifts and scheduling, an employer implements a new overtime policy that requires all employees to be available for emergency shifts. However, an employee with a disability requests an exemption from last-minute overtime assignments due to a medical condition. The employer is unsure whether this exemption is a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA). How should the employer proceed under federal disability laws? A. Deny the request because overtime requirements are an essential job function for all employees. B. Grant the request automatically to avoid potential disability discrimination claims. C. Engage in an interactive process with the employee to determine if a reasonable accommodation can be made without undue hardship. D. Terminate the employee if they cannot meet the company's overtime requirements. Answer. C. Engage in an interactive process with the employee to determine if a reasonable accommodation can be made without undue hardship. Explanation. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA), employers are required to provide reasonable accommodations to employees with disabilities, unless doing so would impose an undue hardship. Automatically denying or granting the request without assessment, eliminating options, and B would be inappropriate. Terminating the employee, eliminating option D, without engaging in the interactive process could expose the employer to legal claims. The correct answer is C, as the employer must engage in an interactive dialogue with the employee to determine whether accommodations, such as schedule modifications or reassignment, can be provided with significantly disrupting business operations. Question 7. In a multi-location scenario where consistency of requirements differ by jurisdiction, a company operating in multiple states struggles with compliance regarding employee drug testing. One of its locations is in a state where recreational marijuana is legal, but another location is in a state where it remains prohibited. The employer enforces a strict drug-free workplace policy and terminates an employee in the first state after test positive for marijuana. The employee claims wrongful termination, citing the state's legalization of marijuana. Which of the following best describes the employer's legal position? A. The termination is lawful because federal law still classifies marijuana as an illegal substance. B. The termination is unlawful because the employee consumed marijuana legally under state law. C. The employer must accommodate off-duty marijuana use unless there is direct impact on job performance. D. The employer can only terminate employees for marijuana use if the drug test results show impairment during work hours. Answer A. The termination is lawful because federal law still classifies marijuana as an illegal substance. Explanation. Even though some states have legalized marijuana, federal law still classifies it as a Schedule I controlled substance. Under the Controlled Substances Act (CSA), employers retain the right to enforce drug-free workplace policies, especially if they comply with federal regulations such as the Drug-Free Workplace Act. This means state-level legalization does not protect employees from termination under federal law. Option is correct. Option B is incorrect because state legalization does not override employer policies, especially if federal regulations apply. Option C is incorrect because most states do not require employers to accommodate off-duty marijuana use unless explicitly stated in law. Option D is incorrect because many employer policies prohibit any detectable level of marijuana use, not just impairment during work hours. Question 8. In a case where industry standards define minimum expectations, a construction company hires independent contractors to complete specialized work on a large-scale infrastructure project. The company provides them with detailed instructions, equipment, and daily oversight similar to its full-time employees. One of the contractors is injured on the job and files a claim for workers' compensation benefits. The company argues that, independent contractor, the worker is not entitled to such benefits. Which of the following best determines whether the worker should be classified as an independent contractor or an employee under federal labor laws? A. The presence of signed independent contractor agreement between the worker and the company. B. The degree of control the company exercises over the worker's tasks, tools, and daily schedule. C. The fact that the worker provides services to multiple clients, including competitors. D. The worker's ability to set their own rates and negotiate contract terms. Answer: B. The degree of control the company exercises over the worker's tasks, tools, and daily schedule. Explanation: under federal labor law and IRA guidelines, worker classification is based on the degree of control an employer exerts over the worker's job duties, equipment, and schedule. Even if contract labels someone as an independent contractor, eliminating option A, they may still be classified as an employee if the employer dictates their work structure, providing services to multiple clients, option C, and setting their own rates, option D, are factors but are not the primary determinants. Because the company exercises significant control, the worker may be legally considered an employee, entitling them to workers' compensation benefits. Question 9. As part of a scenario where contractual obligations must be met under a changing regulatory framework, a financial services company updates its internal policies on customer data protection. A new federal regulation requires stronger encryption and multi-factor authentication for customer accounts, but implementing these changes will significantly increase operational costs. A client sues the company, claiming for failing to update its security measures fast enough after a recent cyber attack compromised personal information. Which of the following factors would most likely determine the company's liability in this lawsuit? A. Whether the company complied with previous security standards before the new regulations were introduced. B. Whether the company promptly took reasonable steps to update its security measures after learning of the new requirements. C. Whether the company suffered financial losses as a result of the cyber attack. D. Whether the company issued public statement acknowledging the breach and promising future improvements. Correct answer: B. Whether the company promptly took reasonable steps to update its security measures after learning of the new requirements. Explanation: under data protection laws, companies are expected to proactively comply with updated security regulations. Simply adhering to previous standards, option A, is insufficient if new legal requirements impose stricter rules. The company's financial losses, option C, are irrelevant to the lawsuit's focus. Customer harm. Public acknowledgement of the breach, option D, does not absolve the company of liability. The correct answer is B, because regulators and courts assess whether the company took prompt, reasonable actions to comply with new security laws once they became effective. Question 10. In a compliance-driven setting where failure to act quickly can result in legal consequences, a healthcare organization learns that one of its employees has violated patient privacy by improperly accessing confidential medical records. The organization's policies prohibit such actions, and the employee claims they were only checking their own records. Patient affected by the breach files complaint under HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability, Accountability Act. What is the organization's best course of action to address the violation and maintain regulatory compliance? A. Immediately terminate the employee to demonstrate zero tolerance policy for HIPAA violations. B. Conduct an internal investigation to determine the extent of the breach and report it if required by HIPAA regulations. C. Apologize to the patient but take no further action since no malicious intent was involved. D. Ignore the complaint since the employee only accessed their own records. Answer: B. Conduct an internal investigation to determine the extent of the breach and report it if required by HIPAA regulations. Explanation: under HIPAA regulations, covered entities must investigate any breach of protected health information (FI) and determine whether notification requirements apply. Automatically terminating the employee, option A, may be premature without a full investigation. Option C is incorrect because intent is not a factor in whether a HIPAA violation has occurred. Option D is incorrect because HIPAA applies even if an employee accesses their own records without proper authorization through the healthcare system. The correct answer is B because the organization must investigate, document findings, and take appropriate corrective action to remain compliant. Question 11. During a critical transition period where existing processes must be adapted to new compliance requirements, a financial institution is implementing a stricter customer authentication system to prevent fraud. The new system requires additional identity verification steps, which some customers find inconvenient, leading to an increase in complaints. Which of the following should the institution prioritize to balance security and customer satisfaction? A. Reducing security measures for long-time customers to minimize complaints. B. Providing customers with clear explanations of why the new verification steps are necessary. C. Allowing customers to bypass the new authentication process if they sign a waiver. D. Reverting to the previous system to maintain customer loyalty. Answer. B. Providing customers with clear explanations of why the new verification steps are necessary. Explanation or security measures must be stringent to prevent fraud. Clear communication about why these changes are necessary can help customers understand the benefits. Option is incorrect because reducing security based on customer tenure increases fraud risks. Option C is also incorrect since allowing waivers could create vulnerabilities. Option D is not viable as reverting to a less secure system contradicts compliance goals. The best approach, B, is to educate customers, ensuring they recognize the necessity of enhanced security. Question 12. In a situation where formal requirements conflict with practical limitations, a construction company is required by new state regulations to use eco-friendly materials in all projects. However, these materials are not widely available and supply chain delays are causing project timelines to slip. Which action would best help the company comply with regulations while managing these constraints? A. Seeking an exemption from the regulation due to supply shortages. B. Partnering with suppliers to secure priority access to compliant materials. C. Continuing projects with non-compliant materials and addressing concerns later. D. Suspending all projects until eco-friendly materials become widely available. Answer. B. Partnering with suppliers to secure priority access to compliant materials. Explanation. Regulatory compliance is mandatory, so ignoring the requirement. C is not an option. Seeking an exemption may not be feasible if the regulation does not allow exceptions. Halting all projects. D is impractical and costly. The best approach, B, is to collaborate with suppliers to ensure access to compliant materials. Demonstrates both compliance efforts and proactive problem solving. Question 13. When analyzing the root causes of sequential problems in a manufacturing process, a company notices an increase in defective products after switching to a new supplier. The defects are causing delays and increasing customer complaints. Which of the following actions should the company take first to address the issue? A. Immediately terminate the contract with the new supplier and find a replacement. B. Conduct a thorough quality assessment to determine if the defects are due to material inconsistencies. C. Offer customers discounts to compensate for the defective product while continuing production. D. Revert to the previous supplier to eliminate any risk of defects. Answer. B. Conduct a thorough quality assessment to determine if the defects are due to material inconsistencies. Explanation. Jumping to conclusions without proper investigation. And D. May be costly and unnecessary. Offering discounts. C. Does not solve the root problem. The best step is conducting a quality assessment. B. To determine if the defect originates from material issues. If supplier quality is confirmed as the issue, the company can then take corrective actions. Question 14. In a high-stakes environment where multiple challenges must be addressed simultaneously, a hospital is facing staff shortages while also preparing for an upcoming accreditation review. Leadership must decide how to allocate resources effectively without compromising patient care. Which approach would be most effective? A. Temporarily reducing non-essential services to reallocate staff to critical areas. B. Focusing all efforts on passing the accreditation review, even if patient care is affected. C. Hiring temporary staff even if they lack full training to meet immediate needs. D. Delaying the accreditation process to focus solely on resolving staffing shortages. Answer. A. Temporarily reducing non-essential services to reallocate staff to critical areas. Explanation. Accreditation is important, but patient care remains the top priority. Focusing only on accreditation, B, is not an option if it compromises care. Hiring undertrained staff, C, could create more risks. Delaying accreditation, D, may not be feasible. The best solution, A, is to prioritize critical services while non-essential functions to manage resources effectively. Question 15. While investigating a complicated issue between different teams in a tech company, leadership discovers that miscommunication is delaying the launch of a new product. Developers claim they need more time for testing, while the marketing team insists on launching immediately to meet deadlines. What would be the best course of action? A. Prioritize the marketing schedule and launch as planned. B. Delay the launch indefinitely to allow more time for testing. C. Facilitate a structured discussion to align both teams on a feasible timeline. D. Have the executive team impose a final deadline overriding concerns. Answer C. Facilitate a structured discussion to align both teams on a feasible timeline. Explanation: launching prematurely A, risks quality issues, while indefinite delays B, are not practical. Forcing a deadline D without addressing concerns could harm collaboration. The best approach C is to align teams to structured discussions balancing quality and deadlines. Question 16. In a multi-location scenario where consistency requirements must be met, a retail chain is rolling out a new inventory management system across all stores. However, some locations report technical difficulties and slower adoption due to differences in existing workflows. Which approach would best ensure a smooth and consistent implementation? A. Mandating that all locations switch immediately, regardless of challenges. B. Allowing each location to modify the system based on their individual needs. C. Providing additional training and support to stores facing difficulties while maintaining the rollout schedule. D. Halting the entire rollout until all locations can implement the system simultaneously. Answer C. Providing additional training and support to stores facing difficulties while maintaining the rollout schedule. Explanation: forcing an immediate switch A risks operational disruptions while allowing too much modification. B. Leads to inconsistencies. Halting the rollout D could delay progress unnecessarily. The best approach C is to support struggling locations while maintaining the overall schedule, ensuring consistency and adoption. Question 17. During an emergency response where multiple areas are impacted, a city experiences a major power outage after a storm. The local government must decide how to allocate resources to restore power while addressing urgent community needs. What should be the primary consideration in resource allocation? A. Restoring power to the largest number of households first. B. Prioritizing critical infrastructure such as hospitals, emergency services, and water treatment plants. C. Distributing resources evenly across all affected areas. D. Waiting for federal assistance before taking major action. Correct answer: B. Prioritizing critical infrastructure such as hospitals, emergency services, and water treatment plants. Explanation: while restoring power to many is important, critical infrastructure must be the first priority. Equal distribution C may not be effective, and waiting for federal aid D could cause unnecessary delays. Prioritizing essential services B ensures public safety and stabilizes the community faster. Question 18. In a case where multiple parties have different objectives, a government agency is negotiating with environmental groups and business leaders on new industrial regulations. Business leaders worry about increased costs while environmental advocates push for stricter policies. Which strategy would be most effective in reaching an agreement? A. Implementing the strictest possible regulations, regardless of business concerns. B. Allowing businesses to operate without new regulations to maintain economic stability. C. Facilitating structured discussions to develop balanced regulations that address both concerns. D. Deferring the decision until one side concedes. Answer: C. Facilitating structured discussions to develop balanced regulations that address both concerns. Explanation: imposing strict regulations A may harm businesses while ignoring environmental concerns. B could lead to legal and public backlash. Delaying action D is not productive. The best approach C is to facilitate discussions that create fair and practical regulations. Question 19. While analyzing the root causes of sequential problems in a software development project, a team finds that unresolved coding errors from early stages are compounding in later phases. Fixing them now would require significant rework and delay delivery. Which course of action would be most effective? A. Releasing the software as planned and addressing issues in future updates. B. Fixing only the most visible issues to minimize delays. C. Revisiting earlier development phases, fixing root causes, and adjusting timelines accordingly. D. Abandoning the current project and restarting from scratch. Answer: C. Revisiting earlier development phases, fixing root causes, and adjusting timelines accordingly. Explanation: releasing flawed software A risks major failures. Fixing only visible issues. B. Does not address underlying problems. Restarting completely. D. Is inefficient. The best solution, C, is to fix root causes, even if timelines must be adjusted, ensuring long-term stability. Question 20. In an environment where different components must interact seamlessly, a transportation company is integrating a GPS-based tracking system for its delivery fleet. However, some drivers report inaccurate tracking data, causing missed deliveries. What should be the first step in resolving the issue? A. Disabling the new system and reverting to the old tracking method. B. Investigating whether hardware, software, or user errors are causing the inaccuracies. C. Instructing drivers to ignore tracking discrepancies and continue normal operations. D. Switching to a completely different tracking provider. Answer: B. Investigating whether hardware, software, or user errors are causing the inaccuracies. Explanation: reverting to the old system may, or switching providers. D. Without identifying the issue may be premature. Ignoring the problem. C. Leads to operational inefficiencies. The best first step, B, is a thorough investigation to determine the cause and implement a targeted solution. Question 21. When scaling up operations that experience significant inefficiencies, a manufacturing company doubles its production capacity to meet increasing demand. However, unexpected bottlenecks arise in supply chain logistics, causing delays in raw material deliveries. What is the most effective strategy to address these inefficiencies? A. Increase raw material orders without assessing supply chain capacity. B. Reduce production rates to match the current supply chain limitations. C. Optimize supply chain logistics by identifying and resolving bottlenecks while maintaining increased production. D. Continue operations as planned, assuming the supply chain will eventually adjust. Answer: C. Optimize supply chain logistics by identifying and resolving bottlenecks while maintaining increased production. Explanation: increasing raw material orders A, without analyzing constraints, could overwhelm suppliers and worsen delays. Reducing production B does not solve the inefficiencies, but merely adjusts to them. Continuing as planned D ignores the problem, potentially leading to missed deadlines and financial losses. The best approach is to proactively analyze and resolve bottlenecks while sustaining the increased production capacity, ensuring long-term efficiency. Question 22. In a situation where formal requirements conflict with practical realities, a government agency is implementing new safety regulations for construction sites. However, small contractors report difficulties in complying due to financial and resource constraints. What would be the most effective approach to balance regulatory compliance and industry feasibility? A. Strictly enforcing regulations with penalties for non-compliance, regardless of contractor concerns. B. Granting temporary exemptions to small contractors delaying compliance requirements. C. Providing financial incentives, training programs, and phased implementation to help contractors adapt. D. Abolishing the new regulations to prevent disruptions in the construction industry. Answer: C. Providing financial incentives, training programs, and phased implementation to help contractors adapt. Explanation: strict enforcement A may lead to non-compliance or push smaller contractors out of business. Temporary exemptions B only delay the issue rather than addressing it. Abolishing regulations D compromises safety and contradicts policy goals. The best approach C supports compliance through financial assistance, education, and phased implementation, ensuring both safety and industry sustainability. Question 23. During a major transformation where existing methods become obsolete, a hospital transitions to a fully digital medical record system. However, experienced staff struggle with the new technology, leading to reduced efficiency and increased patient wait times. What is the best strategy to facilitate this transition? A. Mandating immediate adoption of the system without additional support. B. Providing extensive training and temporary hybrid workflows to ease the transition. C. Allowing staff to use paper records indefinitely while gradually introducing the digital system. D. Reverting to the old paper-based system to maintain efficiency. Answer: B. Providing extensive training and temporary hybrid workflows to ease the transition. Explanation: immediate enforcement. They ignore staff adaptation needs and risks errors. Indefinitely allowing paper records. C. Prevents full adoption. Reverting to paper. D. Eliminates the long-term benefits of digitalization. The best approach. B. Supports employees with training and hybrid workflows, allowing them to gradually adapt while maintaining efficiency. Question 24. While investigating inconsistencies across various units, a financial firm finds discrepancies in compliance reporting among its regional branches. Some branches adhere strictly to guidelines, while others interpret regulations differently. What is the best approach to ensure uniform compliance? A. Mandate uniform guidelines and conduct periodic audits to verify adherence. B. Allow each branch to maintain its own interpretation to encourage flexibility. C. Punish branches with inconsistent compliance without providing additional guidance. D. Reduce compliance requirements to the lowest common standard to ensure consistency. Answer: A. Mandate uniform guidelines and conduct periodic audits to verify adherence. Explanation: allowing flexibility. B. Can lead to regulatory violations. Punishing without guidance. C. Fails to address the root cause of inconsistencies, lowering standards. D. Compromises compliance integrity. The best approach. A. Ensures uniformity through clear guidelines and regular audits, preventing regulatory issues. Question 25. In a high-stakes environment where multiple challenges arise, a cybersecurity team detects a potential data breach affecting customer records. They must decide on the best immediate response to minimize damage. What is the most effective course of action? A. Shut down the entire system immediately, even without confirming the breach. B. Investigate and contain the breach while informing affected customers and authorities. C. Wait for more evidence before taking any action to avoid unnecessary panic. D. Deny the breach publicly to maintain company reputation. Answer: B. Investigate and contain the breach while informing affected customers and authorities. Explanation: shutting down could disrupt operations unnecessarily. Delaying action. C. Allows further damage. Denying the breach. D. Violates ethical and legal obligations. The best approach. B. Is to act swiftly by containing the breach, informing stakeholders, and mitigating risks. Question 26. While managing a hybrid approach where timing issues arise, a global company integrates remote and in-office teams. However, time zone differences and communication delays create workflow inefficiencies. What strategy would best optimize productivity? A. Mandate all employees work within the same time zone, regardless of location. B. Use asynchronous collaboration tools and schedule overlapping work hours for key meetings. C. Eliminate remote work to ensure real-time communication. D. Allow teams to work without structured communication guidelines. Answer: B. Use asynchronous collaboration tools and schedule overlapping work hours for key meetings. Explanation: forcing a single time zone. A. Disregards flexibility, eliminating remote work. C. Removes the benefits of a hybrid approach, lack of structure. D. Leads to inefficiencies. The best solution. B. Balances flexibility and coordination using asynchronous tools and overlapping hours. Question 27. During the introduction of new methods where coordination is essential, a supply chain company adopts AI-driven forecasting tools. However, warehouse managers hesitate to rely on AI predictions over their experience. How should leadership encourage adoption of the new system? A. Replace managers resistant AI with employees who fully trust automation. B. Educate managers on AI benefits while incorporating their input to refine the system. C. Force full adoption immediately, disregarding skepticism. D. Continue using traditional forecasting methods alongside AI indefinitely. Answer: B. Educate managers on AI benefits while incorporating their input to refine the system. Explanation: replacing managers disrupts operations. Immediate enforcement. C. Creates resistance. Parallel methods. D. Prevents full integration. The best approach. B. Educates managers while valuing their expertise, leading to smoother adoption. Question 28. When implementing backup procedures across various departments, a financial institution faces resistance from teams reluctant to follow redundancy protocols. What is the most effective way to ensure compliance? A. Mandate strict adherence and penalize teams that fail to follow protocols. B. Explain the critical importance of backups through real case scenarios and training. C. Allow departments to opt out if they believe backups are unnecessary. D. Only implement backups after a failure occurs. Answer: B. Explain the critical importance of backups through real case scenarios and training. Explanation. Strict penalties may create resistance. Opting out. C. Undermines security. Waiting for failure. D. Is reactive, not preventive. The best method. B. Educates teams on risks, making compliance more natural and effective. Question 29. In a scenario where efficiency decreases across multiple teams, a software company notices slow development cycles after adopting new project management software. What should leadership do first? A. Revert to the previous system to restore efficiency. B. Analyze user feedback and identify specific inefficiencies before making adjustments. C. Mandate full usage of the new system without questioning inefficiencies. D. Switch to a different project management tool immediately. Answer. B. Analyze user feedback and identify specific inefficiencies before making adjustments. Explanation. Reverting. A. Prevents progress. Mandating use. C. Ignores team concerns. Switching again. D. Wastes resources. The best step. B. Analyzes inefficiencies to refine the process. Question 30. When facing resistance to strategic changes that affect long-term goals, a retail company decides to shift its focus from brick-and-mortar stores to e-commerce. However, senior employees accustomed to traditional sales models resist the transition. What is the best approach to gain their support? A. Enforce the e-commerce shift immediately, regardless of resistance. B. Lay off employees who refuse to adapt to the new strategy. C. Communicate the benefits of e-commerce, provide training, and gradually implement the transition. D. Maintain the traditional sales model to avoid conflict. Answer. C. Communicate the benefits of e-commerce, provide training, and gradually implement the transition. Explanation. Forcing the shift. A. It may lead to low morale and decreased productivity. Laying off employees. B. Creates a negative culture and talent loss. Keeping the old model. D. Hinders progress and competitiveness. The best strategy. C. Addresses concerns through clear communication, training, and phased implementation, ensuring this transition and employee buy-in.